My name is Kenneth Powers. I was born in Green Bay, Wisconsin. I joined the Navy in 1960 in November, and I got out of the Navy in 1970 in January. I served 9 years, 1 month, and 11 days. In 1960, I volunteered because there was no draft for the Navy at that time. I was 17 years old, and I was not going to graduate my senior year because I went to parochial school, and then I'd moved on to public school, and my religious training in parochial school did not give me credits in the public school. So I was independent, and I got my father to sign the papers because you had to have parental authority to go in the Navy at 17. So I told my dad, I'm going in the Navy. I'm out of high school. I'm not going to stick around if I can't graduate this year, so I'm off. And he signed, and 2 weeks later, I was at Great Lakes taking recruit training. I went during the winter. What most of us remembered was how cold it was, and the dress, all we had was thin nylon socks, dress issue Navy socks, and our feet were always cold. That's the worst thing. But recruit training went very well. We didn't have any problems. What I remember most is some evenings when it was really cold, you were not required to eat supper. So a lot of the guys from southern parts of the country would take off, wouldn't hang around. It was too cold to stand out and wait to go in. That's just probably what I remembered the most. After I graduated from recruit training, I went to Norfolk, Virginia, and I worked as I don't know what to call them. I don't want to say flunky, but they needed extra hands at the bottom. I worked at the receiving station, and as whatever they needed, I helped out. The receiving stations are different. At that time, when the ship was out and the guy was transferred, he would stop at the receiving station, and they would hook him up or transport him to wherever he needed to go to get to his ship. Or ships were leaving and guys only had a couple months left. They would stay at the receiving station when the ship left until their time was up. And I did that until that year, and then in January, I had my real first set of real orders, and I was sent to the Caribbean. I went to San Juan for what they called Operation Springboard for about 3 months, and then I was transferred to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba in 1962, and I did my tour of duty there 15 months, and I was stationed there during the Cuban Missile Crisis. And after that was the end of Guantanamo finally, and I got transferred to a destroyer out of New York at the Brooklyn Navy Yard. The Cuban Missile Crisis. You probably don't know what that is, but it was at the time, Russia, or the Soviet Union, was installing missiles in Cuba, and the United States wanted them gone. So the United States, under John Kennedy, was president at that time, and he put a blockade up onto Cuba. And some people thought there was a serious threat of a nuclear war. I don't know if it was true or not, but that was, in Cuba, we don't know none of that stuff. We're running. I was on the airfield working in the galley and as a storekeeper. So all of a sudden we had a lot of Marines to take care of and feed. And Cuba was blockaded, and then the Soviet Union agreed to remove the missiles, and then things calmed down, and I finished my tour. Oh, well, we had total isolation. We couldn't get off the base, you know. I had one weekend where I was going to be flown to Jamaica for a weekend off, and I came down with appendicitis, and my only time to get off the island was because I was in the hospital with appendicitis. But anyway, it was fine. Then I had orders, and it was comfortable there, except during the missile crisis. You're down in the islands. It's warm, sunny. It wasn't a bad place. They had families there. The families were sent back to the U.S. during the missile crisis, but they came back afterwards. The only thing you could do there was drink a beer or go to a movie. So when I was off, we'd go drink a beer or go watch a movie or go swimming. We could always go swimming. Well, it was nice. I had 30 days leave, so I went home. It was good to get home. And at that time, my dad was alive, and he had a cottage up in northern Wisconsin in Lakewood, and I got to spend that summer up at the cottage. And then I was off to New York for my new duty station. My new duty station was the USS Remy, DD-688. It was a training ship for reserves. It's actually had two crews, a ship's company that maintained the ship, and also a reserve crew that would take over for 2 weeks in the summer and 1 weekend a month. And we had to maintain the ship when they weren't there, is what our job was. That was good, and I really liked it. It was hard to have any fun in New York because even then it was very expensive and the pay didn't change in New York. So it didn't go far, but we would go out, and I enjoyed it on that ship very much. We had our little small company that maintained the ship. We took care of each other. It was good, but they decided to decommission the ship, and they sent it to Philadelphia and was decommissioned, and then I got a new set of orders. My new set of orders was the main ship in the world at that time, the United States ship USS Enterprise. At that time, it was called CVN 65. They just scrapped it, started I think last year. And it was the first nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, and it still maintains the longest length of any carrier that the U.S. had. And it was, for me, being on small stations all my life, I didn't like it at first because it was huge. When it was fully manned with the squadrons, you had 5,000 men on that ship. It was a different world, but we went a lot of places. Probably the main event on there for me was that we did a world cruise. We circumnavigated the globe in about 80 days. We started off in Norfolk, and then we stopped in the Mediterranean and did our tour. And from the Mediterranean, we went down around Africa, up to Pakistan, then over to Sydney, Australia, around South America. Our ship stopped at Rio de Janeiro, and then from there we came back to Norfolk. The USS Bainbridge and the USS Long Beach were also nuclear powered, so it was a 3-ship world cruise. Quite an event, and I got to cross the equator 4 times. Well, going places, I never imagined ever thinking of going to Sydney, Australia. Karachi, Pakistan wasn't so much of a big deal, but Rio de Janeiro, got to walk along the beach. It's in wintertime. It was wintertime there, so it wasn't really crowded, but it's not cold. But to walk along Copacabana Beach, I never thought I'd do that. So it's something different. I guess the treatment that we received when we went places on the Enterprise, we were always welcome, especially in Sydney, Australia, because they were Navy fans. They liked the United States Navy. And that's a leftover from World War II, because they felt the Navy stopped the Japanese from invading Australia. Not just the U.S. Navy, but the Australian Navy, what have you. It was it's an entirely different world back then, with the Soviet Union and the U.S. I don't know what's called the Cold War today. It was a different time. So when we got back to Norfolk, the ship went into dry dock, and they were refueling the reactors. And during that time, I had a major event in my life. I got married. And settled in Norfolk actually the ship was in Newport News, so we had an apartment in Newport News. And by the time it got out of dry dock, I was about eligible for shore duty, because I had almost 6 years in, and so I was transferred to a BF squadron there at the Norfolk Naval Station until my shore duty orders came in. And then I was transferred to Great Lakes, Illinois, where I started out in boot camp. Great Lakes, I was assigned to the supply department, which was covered the Naval Station, the Recruit Training Command, the School Command. And I was assigned to Galley 928, which was the largest galley for feeding recruits at that time. And I became the night baker, and I was a watch captain and a night baker the whole time I was there. That's all I actually did. And we had another child while I was there. It was my oldest son. And now my 2 years were up, and then the excitement started. And I got transferred again. I was transferred to Assault Craft Unit 1 in Coronado, California. So wife, daughter, son, and I loaded up, and we headed off to Coronado. Well, a sailor doesn't live in Coronado, if you have any idea how fancy that place is, but the Navy is there. They have the assault unit there, and the SEALs train there. And we operated landing craft. And we were trained as a group of men, and we were assigned a boat to practice on. We practiced on, and then when they felt our training was together, we were sent to Vietnam. And that's where my tour in Vietnam started. We were stationed out of Da Nang, Vietnam, and we hauled supplies up and down the rivers, mostly up to the Hue or Dong Ha, on the Qua Viet River or the Perfume River is what we did. And we hauled everything, mostly ammunition, but we hauled a lot of other stuff, lumber, beer, food, you name it, gasoline. And that was our job, and that's what we did the whole tour of duty in Vietnam. I was fortunate. We never had any serious combat that we were involved in. We had, because our cargo was, the rivers were kept clean, so the boats, they wanted the stuff to get through. So it wasn't that, some boats, we did have casualties, but we didn't, my boat didn't. So we ran the rivers, and then they came up and said in January of '69, the boat's going to be given over to South Vietnam. So we cleaned the boat up, emptied it out, and off we came back to sunny California. We had a small house on Hilltop Drive in San Diego. Enjoyed it there, nice neighborhood. By that time, we had another child. Back then, having kids one after another was not considered that terrible, but today I guess it is. But I had a daughter born while I was in Vietnam, my daughter Laura. And, so we had to make a decision. I'd made E6, and did I want to stay in, or did we want to go back? Because we had no family in California. Mine was in Wisconsin. My wife's was in Virginia. And my dad did come out and visit us, but that was the only thing. And it was with by then it was 3 kids driving home it was too far. So, well, did we like it? We didn't mind California, but we decided to get out. And that's when I decided that ended my naval career. And it was mostly done because of family. First surprise, I think of the Navy, ships, water, go to Great Lakes. I never saw the water, never saw a ship. I said, where is this? They didn't even have a model of anything. It was, I said, And then I go to Norfolk. I'm not on a ship. I wasn't on a ship until '63. I've been in the Navy almost 3 years, and I finally got on a ship. What it was like, I expected more sea duty, I guess, than I did. I was basically actual at sea. I spent a couple years on the Enterprise and 6 months on the Remy. But my 9 years, I had less than 3 months aboard a ship. I mean, overseas duty counted as sea duty, and being in Cuba counted as sea duty, but you're not and on the Enterprise, it's like being a job in a big factory. You're in your one spot. You got my department had 80 men in it, you know, so I mean, you didn't need to know anybody else, you know, you had enough. It was interesting. I guess the lack of sea time, but I was fortunate. I did get to go a lot of spots in the world, all around the Mediterranean and around the world, up to Canada. Yep, it was good. Jobs weren't as difficult as they are today to get a decent job that you could make a living on. We had 3 kids, and I had to go to work right away. You don't get unemployment compensation when you get out of the Navy. So I'd saved up my vacation time to help, you know, I got travel paid as far as back to Green Bay area. That's from California, so we got that for that, and me and the family. And I knew people here in the Waukegan, in the area here, because I lived in Waukegan for 2 years when I was at Great Lakes. So I called up a couple people. My dad was looking for work up in Green Bay. It's a paper mill town, and the only thing really that paid well was to get on a waiting list to go to work in a paper mill. And I had no technical training or anything. I actually didn't even have a high school diploma yet. I did eventually, and I eventually went to college. But I got a hold of a guy I worked with, and he found me a job. And so that's what got us to Waukegan. We moved our household goods to Waukegan, and I got a job. For veterans today, I don't think the ones that have mental problems, a lot of us are fine. I never had mental issues. I didn't have any problems. I didn't even think about the VA as anything. But I don't think we're looking after these guys. You know, my generation in Vietnam, you did the year, you were done. Now these young men are going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. They're never finished. So I don't know, there seems to be a lot of stress on them and it's guerrilla warfare that's different than what we were dealing with today. In my time, you had lines, I mean, it wasn't big fronts like in other wars, but it's house to house and through it just, I don't know. There seems to be a lot of mental issues, and I don't think they're taken care of. And I don't think any veteran should be homeless and on the streets. But there is help for them, but to get them to do it, I would like to see. We do have a recovery unit out at Union Grove that is available to them if they can get in there and get help. That's one of the outfits that the VFW, through our Cootie organization, we helped. Matter of fact, last Friday we had a pancake breakfast for them out at Union Grove. We sponsored that. But I would like to see them have, the mental health is the issue. As far as physical and mental care, if they got health problems and they were a combat veteran, the care is there. But the mental issues I don't think are addressed properly. I would have joined the VFW earlier, but I worked second shift or odd hours. Actually, when I retired, I was second shift, and so I never would join. So when I retired, I did join the VFW, and it's very different today. When I joined, we'd have a meeting. We still had a lot of World War II and Korean War veterans, guys to talk to. That was get their stories and hear from them. That was really great. You know, I worked with a guy that was a Pearl Harbor survivor at one time. It just he survived, and he spent the rest of the war in the Navy in the Pacific. But he was there on December 7th, and he had a lot to talk about. One of the things in the Navy that when I joined in 1960, a lot of your chief petty officers and your seniors were all World War II veterans doing their 20 years, and they were getting at the end of their time to get out. So They always teased us because we were idiots. They were World War II veterans. We didn't know nothing. Yeah. It was, I had a good life. I can't, I was married, had 4 children, still have them. One of them, my youngest son's daughter's birthday is today. My daughter-in-law, Jackie, is today. It was, we had a good life. We had our ups and downs like all families, but we survived. Unfortunately, cancer got the best of her, so I lost her in 2007, and I've been on my own since then. But my family is around me, when I leave here, it's where I'm going over to one of my kids' house.